This question here is just a little bit tricky because it doesn't have a y-intercept. When you look at this thing here, typically we have a y equals mx plus b, and what they're saying here, there's just no b here. There's just m times x. There's some slope times x. And so this is section 9.1, so they intend for you to understand that you need to do x and y's and create a table here. We're going to use 0. And since this is a fraction with 1/5 in it, let's use, we can use any value of x that we want. So if we use 1, it's going to leave a fraction because we'll have 1/5 times 1. We'll just leave the 1 just to show you what you get. All right, and now when you use 5, let's use 5 and let's use -5. All right, so when you put in 0 for x, you get y equals 1/5 times 0, and that's just 0. So 0 is always an easy one. All right, now let's do the 1. Let's just show you what happens here. You get 1/5 times 1. Well, that's just 1/5. And the problem is over here when I go to graph this, you can't graph 1/5. There's no way to tell MyMathLab that, hey, I need to get like right in that little tiny space between 0 and 1. It won't let you do that. So while this is true, this is totally true right here, we'll ignore that one. Now, if we use 5, though, we get a simple result. 1/5 times 5 is 1. Right, because the 5 cancels that, and then if we use -5, we have 1/5 times -5. They cancel, and now I have a -1 times a 1, so -1. And these are points, so I have 0, 0, 5, comma 1, and -5, comma -1. And so these are points that I can plot. So 0, 0, and then go over 5, 1, there's 5, 1, and then -1, -5 is right there. And so that graph goes about like that. And again, all you need to graph this are 2 points, and you use the third point down here to check that you did it right. If you put a line at 0, 0 and one at 5, 1, if your line does not cross at -5, -1, then you did something wrong. Now, of course, the fast way is to recognize slope-intercept form is going on here. We have y equals mx, and like I said, there's no b part. So that means b is 0. The b is the y-intercept, and it's 0. So what that means is we go to on our graph here, and we put our first point is actually at the origin, and we saw that right here. Of course, 0, 0 is one of the points on this line. And now remember, slope says rise over run. Right, so rise over run, we're going to rise 1 and run 5. So we're going to go up 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and put our second point. And so those are our 2 points, and then we draw and connect that line. All right, let's do that over in MyMathLab. All right, so we're going to come over here and get our line tool. We'll plot our first point at 0, 0, and then we set our slope as 1 over 5. So we go up 1, and then we go over 5. And so you see we have the point 0, 0 and the point 1 or 5, 1. And then as our check, we said if we go over to -5 and -1, that should be a point on our line, and it clearly is. Our line goes right through that point. So that's how you would do a check. So we hit save and check. And one thing I'll make a comment on, the smaller this number is, so we have a small number over a large number, that's a flat slope line. That's one that's kind of starting to become horizontal. If it was 5 over 1, that's a really steep line. So the slope does tell you, if you look at that number and try to understand, you can see that the quantity of that slope will tell you how steep the line is or is not. And now the y-intercept we said earlier is 0, 0. This there is no y-intercept on there, which means that it is 0. And so that's how you would do that question.